About to be spoken here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, presented to you exclusively by Podcast Eat and AdFreeShows.com. I, of course, am John Alba, joined as I am every single week by the broken one, the woken one, the spoken one himself, Mr. Matt Hardy, wearing that yellow tank. I feel like I've seen Macho Man wear that tank in some sort of 80s promotional picture. How you doing today, man?
Good, man. This is the version of Matt Hardy you're currently getting on AAW. This was the version of Matt Hardy that left the Hardy Boys, that transitioned into Mattitude. So I had this tank top in, and I might wear it tonight whenever I wrestle, actually. So I thought I would rock it today here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy.
You didn't share this with our audience, but you told this to me privately. The shirt that you wore in the Christian match, I believe it was,
yes,
was an homage to when you turned on Jeff. Is that correct?
Yeah. If you watch that point in my career, if you look back, I actually posted a couple of those clips this week. Says the net. How X amount of years ago today, says the net. You saw the scene where I ran out and Shannon and Shane Moore, Shane Helms, the Hurricane, they'd cleared the ring already, and I ran in and acted like I made the save for them, and I forced them to lift me on their shoulders and celebrate me. Nobody likes to throw a party in his own honor more than Matt Hardy. That's a direct quote from the serial thrillers, Shane Helms and Mike Maverick, in one of our programs. And then also, I had a match against Chavo Guerrero, and I showed the very end of it. Like, Kane's pyro went off, and I got frightened, and Chavo defeated me. And then I told Mike Chioda that this is the biggest screw job since the Bret Hart screw job in Montreal, because we were in Fayetteville, North Carolina. But I'm wearing the tank tops in those scenes as well. And the tank tops were me trying to find myself as I became Matt Hardy version 1, the Sensei of Mattitude. It was my transition from leaving the Hardy Boys and being Hardy Boys Matt, as I wore the tight shirts up top. I changed to still wearing the black pants at the time, and I was wearing these tank tops with like tribal signs on them and whatnot. It was in style back in the day whenever I first started doing it. Now it's not as much, but it is an homage to my transition into becoming Matt Hardy version 1.
I love that. Rumor has it you ran into the Hurricane recently in an airport. Did he try to sandbag you there?
I did run into the Hurricane, and he did sandbag me a little bit. I had to call him out first. I saw him first. Of course, his vision is very bad. He's a very old guy, and he's wearing glasses, as you see. But I did see him. We had a nice little chat for a while, and it was very interesting to be able to run into him and see him and catch up. So that was good. And I was very respectful to him, but he is my elder.
I didn't realize they allow meteors in the airports these days, but
it's crazy. Yeah, dinosaurs as well, Also, the biggest sandbag you'll ever see. I call him the Jurassic Sandbag, Shane Helms. That's his new gimmick. We're going to rebrand him. Forget about the Hurricane, guys. His new gimmick, the Jurassic Sandbag, Shane Helms.
It sounds like a good t-shirt somewhere like at boxofgimmicks.com, where you can get your Let It All Play Out t-shirt. You can get your Matt Fiction t-shirt. You can get your Spoken Matt Hardy t-shirt or your Extreme Life of Matt Hardy t-shirt, boxofgimmicks.com. Get those. That's where you want to get in on the fun. Matt and I both have all those gimmicks, and you should put one on your back as well. And it's funny with these changes going on in WWE, magically, I'm seeing less Let It Play Out.
Oh, boy.
Crazy how that happens, isn't it?
Who would have thunk it? It's very refreshing, their product recently. And I think at the end of the day, it is very good for the industry. It helps make their show better, and it helps make WWE and AEW more competitive.
Your boy Road Dogg going back to WWE, we found out this week. Who would have thought that DX would be running WWE one day?
I would have expected it back then, considering how powerful they were, especially during the McMahon-Helmsley era. It's funny, the McMahon-Helmsley era, when Triple H and Stephanie first got married, and they were like, taking over the company and running it supposedly. Obviously that wasn't legitimate at that time. Vince was obviously still the boss, but it is funny. You fast forward 20, 21, 22 years later, and it's a shoot. It's the Helmsley McMahon era.
All those guys are still active, though, between Paul obviously running things there. Shawn Michaels just got an executive position in the company. Road Dogg just got an executive position in the company. And Billy Ass is still out in AEW kicking ass. Looks like he's busy with the Acclaimed.
Yeah.
Those damn ass boys, as your boy Danhausen would say. What do you think of the ass boys? I've never asked you about them.
I like them a lot. It's funny. I have them burned into my mind as children. I remember them showing up at Orlando house shows. Whenever we were in Florida around Billy's area, they would show up with him a lot. And I just remember them as little kids. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of guys that I wrestle with that are going to remember like Maxwell and Wolfie and Barty as children, especially if they end up being in the pro wrestling industry. It's just, I remember them as young, innocent children. And it's so funny to see them as wrestlers and as workers and as boys. And if I happen to walk into the hotel and see them down by the bar hanging out, eating and having a drink or something, it's very funny, but it's also very reminiscent of just how life is never ending. It never stops. It keeps ticking and people grow. And these kids have grown into adults, and now they're actually wrestlers. And their improvement since the pandemic days has been extraordinary. I mean, they've done so well, and I'm very proud of them. I like them both a lot, and I love chatting with them and helping them if I can in any capacity.
Those gun boys, the sons of guns, if you will.
Yeah,
they've got that punchable face factor.
They do.
That will certainly help you.
They get it. They know what they're doing. They're good. And their dad has been great to help them. I mean, that's the best tool you can have if you're a second generation guy and you grow up around the business and you grow up learning the ins and outs of the business. I mean, those guys end up being the best. They have such a head start on everyone else.
I saw you getting a little sentimental towards Private Party on BTE this week.
Yeah, I'm watching them from afar. So I do want them to do good. When we first started, we did have a very tight bond. And I did look at them originally. They were huge fans. They were huge fans of the Hardy Boys, and on AEW programming, I ended up taking advantage of them because of that. But I do. I really care about them because we formed a very genuine bond, and there's a big part of me that feels like they're almost my kids.
They're your foster kids. We talked about it last week.
Yeah. I mean, there was times where I would even run into them and go, "What's up, biological?" I would say that to them all the time. And that's still kind of my greeting for Private Party. So, I'm watching them from afar, and I want them to do well. And I'm very remorseful about what I did to them and their career whenever I was Big Money Matt.
It was a cool episode last week of Dynamite. Man, I know another episode will have happened once this ultimately drops, but Kenny Omega coming back, that was a monster megastar moment. What did you think of Kenny's return there?
I enjoyed it. I really appreciated how he was wearing the shirt and he was taped underneath that, and he was still selling his injuries as he came back a little prematurely, supposedly, and the way he was selling all these major injuries it was reported that he had in the context of the match was
amazing.
Really great.
He's amazing.
And it was fantastic storytelling. I love that match.
I just will never understand people that don't get it with Kenny. To each their own. Everyone's entitled to their thought. If you truly understand and appreciate professional wrestling, you see what that guy does out there.
Of course.
It's just
and
another level.
I'll say this again. The people who don't, they're very polarizing, all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
But Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks, people who don't get how good they are, they're just missing out, and they do not get pro wrestling. They may think they get pro wrestling, but they do not. If you are hating on Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, and Nick Jackson, you're a fucking moron. I mean, it is what it is. They are great, and I will defend them to my dying day because they are amazing. They are all groundbreakers. They have set so many trends, and the three of those guys are one of the major reasons AEW is in existence. They really, really are. And the stuff they did in New Japan was fantastic. And they've all broke so many boundaries. And they've gone so much further than anybody thought they would do. So I'm going to say it again. If you have hate and you dislike Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, and Kenny Omega, you are a fucking idiot. Quote.
There is a different taste for everybody. Everyone is entitled to have that ice cream cone assortment. Oh, I like strawberry, I like vanilla, I like chocolate, whatever. And their style cannot be for you, and that's okay. But if you don't appreciate and understand their physical and psychological ability when it comes to professional wrestling, you're missing out. You're just missing out. And when they are gone, when their days in the ring are done, you're going to regret all of that, because they are generational talent. Aside from the physical nature, the caliber of storytellers they are is truly on a different level than a lot of other performers. So yeah, maybe not as visceral as what you're saying, but I definitely agree with the sentiments in that regard.
And to go a little deeper in that, like, wrestling is subjective. Like, you know, I'm one half of the Hardy Boys. If you don't like us, that's fine. That's okay. We're not for everyone. As you said, if you don't like the Young Bucks, I do get that. If you don't like Kenny Omega, but if you don't appreciate and you don't like them from their professional game and their professional status and their innovation, their professional innovation of pro wrestling, then that's where you're a fucking moron. That's where you don't get it. And I will go on record saying that, but because they are very, very special, and they have changed the way the industry runs.
I don't disagree with you there. I'm sure they will be at All Out. I'll be at All Out. You'll be in Chicago that weekend. I've got Top Guy weekend with ad-free shows, but I'm also going to be, we're breaking some news here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy.
Uh-oh.
You know, I got so inspired by you being an innovator, Matt Hardy, a serial reinventor, if you will, that I decided to pitch some ideas myself. Okay. Because I've had this concept for pro wrestling broadcasting that has never been done before, ever. I come from the real sports world, sports TV. And you know how
John Alba.
That's right. Emmy award-winning sportscaster. I don't know.
Emmy award-winning sports-centric John Alba.
I don't know if you've heard this right there. I don't know if you've ever watched a football game or a basketball game on television.
I have.
Good to hear. There are sideline reporters on those broadcasts, are there not? You've got someone who is on the side. They throw it down after halftime. Hey, I was talking to Nick Saban at halftime. He told me that his team needs to blah, 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 blah. Uh-huh. It takes you inside the game a little bit. We're going to bring that to professional wrestling at the Wrestling Showcase on Fight TV All Out weekend. And I'm very excited because I've had this idea for a really long time. I've pitched it to every major promotion in the United States, in fact. None of them want to listen to me, but that's fine. That's okay. Because the Wrestling Showcase and Josh Chernoff's team are listening to me. And for the first time ever in professional wrestling history, we're going to have a pro wrestling sideline reporter on a broadcast.
Okay.
And I will be the pro wrestling sideline reporter. I'm going to take you inside the matches in a way that's never been done before on a professional wrestling broadcast.
All right.
So we'll see how that goes. So check out the Wrestling Showcase. That's going to be the night before All Out on Fight TV. You can pre-order it now if you'd like to, Fight TV. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I hope to see you in Chicago there that weekend as well. It'll be great.
I'm sure you will. All right, everyone, let's give it up for the Emmy award-winning sports-centric John Alba.
Thank you. Quintessential host, I believe the review said last week. So
quintessential host.
Don't forget that.
What a moniker.
It's getting on a t-shirt, boxofgimmicks.com. So, Matt Hardy, you mentioned the Young Bucks. My gut tells me that the Young Bucks were probably pretty darn heavily influenced by a series of matches we like to refer to as tables, ladders, and chairs.
I would guess.
The Young Bucks have become aficionados of ladder matches in their own right, and that's because they probably spent a lot of time watching TLC 1, TLC 2, Triangle Ladder Match that the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudley Boys were all involved with, and that is our topic today, specifically TLC 1. This is an episode that people have been clamoring for so long. You and I did a little early sneak peek episode, if you will, on adfreeshows.com where we watched the match with our ad-free shows patrons, and they got to ask questions, and that was super cool. But today on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, we are going to take a deep dive behind the match. And you are going to reveal some things about this match that have never been revealed before. Mm-hmm. And we're going to look at the build to this match, which certainly had plenty of typical 2000s WWE at the time what the fuck moments.
I'm going to raise my hand.
Please.
I don't want to interrupt you or cut you off.
No.
It's funny you were saying that. You were talking about the Young Bucks being inspired, but also Kenny Omega was as well. And whenever he returned this week, we had a quick conversation. We were talking about our podcast of the Mount Rushmores of tag teams. Ooh. And Kenny Omega said, if the Hardys aren't on your Mount Rushmore of tag teams, you're totally disqualified from even answering that as well. So that was something, a quote from Kenny Omega, which was fantastic.
There you go.
Once again, I mean, and it's not because those guys are all fans of the Hardy Boys and were inspired by the Hardy Boys. I mean, if they weren't, I would still be preaching about all three of those guys.
And if you disagree with Kenny Omega's opinion, you know what you are? You're a fucking moron. That's what you are.
Exactly, yeah. I like it. We're going to make some headlines with that.
Oh, yes. Matt Hardy. It's TLC 1 SummerSlam 2000. Hit us with that Matt fact.
Matt fact, Matt always saves his airplane snacks for his children.
That's a good daddy right there.
That's been my new thing for about a month, especially since I've been dieting and eating a little cleaner. Like you always get those little pretzels or those little bars that have a little bit of chocolate or marshmallows in them, whatever, as they hand me out those airplane snacks. I always put those in my little pouch and then put them in my bag. And whenever I get home on that first day, right before the kids go to bed, I'll give them a little airplane snack. And I'll say, okay, I'm just going to save them for you guys. I don't need to be eating them anyway. I don't need those extra calories. And they really enjoy it. They'll ask, what did you get this week from the airplane, Dad?
So it's not like, Dad, you were in Anaheim, California this week. What souvenir from Disneyland did you bring us? Instead, it's, are they mixed nuts or crackers this week that you brought us?
Yes. They like the chocolate candy stuff the most. Once in a while, they'll find some nuts they like. They're very different, too.
Okay.
Barty is down with the nuts. Maxwell, not so much. He's not a big fan of peanuts. Wolfie is just a maniac as it is anyway, but he's looking for as much chocolate as he can possibly get because he wants to stay up 24 hours a day.
You got to be careful there.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. So the last time we checked in on the year 2000, it was our King of the Ring Too Cool episode, which I liked, and you should go check out in the archive, extremeparty.com. I thought that was a cool little perspective.
I concur.
Edge and Christian defeated Too Cool, TNA, and the Hardy Boys to become the tag team champions there. And you guys would actually continue a program with TNA through the next month into Fully Loaded 2000. And that's a show that, I don't know if you remember that show. We didn't cover it here because it was just a 6-man tag that you guys had. But that's considered to be one of the better wrestling shows of that entire year in 2000. And you guys defeat TNA. It's Team Extreme against TNA and Trish in the opener.
Right.
People were into that match for sure. It was kind of one of the first showings of Team Extreme in that environment where we're seeing you guys work a trios match. Trish is still really young in her career here, but in the Wrestling Observer, Dave Meltzer notes that Michael Hayes and Tom Pritchard actually worked extensively with Lita and Trish Stratus in that match to help them work through some of the hurdles they were encountering. What do you remember at that time about guys like Michael Hayes and Tom Pritchard getting involved hands-on with matches like that? Because I'm not sure, I've never heard of Michael Hayes specifically getting involved in matches to that degree at that point.
Michael was always great. Michael was pretty much shadowed myself and Jeff, especially because he had a vested interest in us, obviously, because we were together for a while. But he would typically be our producer, our agent, our coach, whatever term you want to use. There's many different terms. But he was always great. He always had out-of-the-box ideas, and that worked for us. And I knew for us it was going to be a special match because we were able to kind of break new ground with the whole intergender concept because, the girls could do stuff to the guys, and being able to break that new ground made the match fresh and exciting. It was almost like, doing all the ladder match stuff and the table match stuff. We were entering uncharted territory, and we were able to kind of like pave the way. So that helped us out a lot in that environment.
It also feels like watching the matches back that the Hardy Boys really found their stride once Team Extreme became a package. Everything was complete in that sense. And from a character standpoint, the Hardy Boys filled out a little more. That was my observation, at least. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do agree. Yeah, it was right. The formation of Team Extreme allowed us to kind of capture every demographic. You know, we were already very popular on our own, but just putting Team Extreme together allowed us to capture all demographics, which was so beneficial to us.
Trish was so young to the scene at that point. She was still so fresh to the company. She's not very good in this match, but did you see that superstar potential in Trish? She was just on Raw this past week and got a mega superstar reaction. She really is one of, if not the most popular woman in the history of the company. Trish
always had a great she had a great work ethic. She was very driven, and she was always very motivated to learn. She had a lot of love for pro wrestling, you could tell, and you could tell that she had an athletic background, as she did, modeling, and it obviously trained, and she was very big into being into shape, but she applied that same discipline to the ring as well. And you could tell, as long as she could pick things up and learn them, that she was going to be great when it was all said and done. And she was also very charismatic. She had a very good personality, and she got it. She understood what pro wrestling was. And I knew if her body could keep up with her learning curve and she could physically do all the things that she wanted to do, that she was going to end up being really good one day. And she was, fortunately.
On our WrestleMania 2000 episode, you and Christian Cage, your frenemy, discussed how even at WrestleMania, which
I call Christian Cage the CLP now. You know what that stands for? Say it, John.
Wait, no, hold on. So
say it, John.
I have to say this first. So I was watching Botchamania. Do you watch Botchamania?
I haven't in a while. I mean, I've seen it. Obviously, I'm very aware of Botchamania, and I've guest starred on it many times.
And they went in on the little No Mercy sign.
Oh, okay.
Your match.
Yep.
And they had the old graphics juxtaposed from the No Mercy era in against your match. And it brought back so many memories for me because I loved playing those games. WrestleMania 2000, I was playing the Hardy Boys all the time, man. I was playing as I never played as Edge and Christian, who would waste their time doing that. I was never doing that. But I would spend nights and nights and nights and nights and nights on end until one point where my N64 actually broke because of how much I played No Mercy. And it just brought a lot of good memories back seeing that. And I just wanted to share that because those video games, man, for you guys at the time, that must have just been the coolest thing ever, seeing those awful 8-bit renderings of you guys. But it must have been incredible. Was that just the best?
Being in a video game was a huge deal. That was the two biggest things for myself and my brother. Being in our first video game and getting your first action figure. Those were huge. It was definitely proof that you'd made it.
It's awesome. That's so cool. All right, CLP.
So John, CLP. Say it.
I don't got it.
Say it, John.
I don't want to
say it, John.
That territory, Matt Hardy.
Say it, John.
I don't want to go down that territory. I've already
said
more on the show.
Say it, John. Say it, John.
You're not going to peer pressure me into doing this.
Say it, John.
You're not going to do this.
Creepy.
Little.
Finish it, John.
Prick.
Okay, we'll go with it. Creepy little prick. Creepy little pussy!
I tried to keep it
it's Christian Cage.
I tried to keep it a little more PG.
Yeah, this whole journey I've been on with Private Party, it's a lot more freeing. I'm not worried about what I say as much.
Okay.
Don't care what people think of me.
That's good. So,
creepy little pussy. Christian Cage. Don't ever forget that. Ever.
The fact you were able to get away with saying that on TV is pretty incredible, but that's besides the point.
Yeah.
So my point that I was making was, on the WrestleMania 2000 episode, we talked about how you guys knew that you were going to face off again later in the year. at SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
So when was that direction given to you guys?
The week after WrestleMania. I mean, it was we knew we were going to be having a rematch very shortly after the first triangle ladder match, and we knew it was going to be 3 teams. And it was also promised to us shortly after WrestleMania that we were going to get our big blow-off win in that match at SummerSlam, because it was also in Raleigh, and like everything that all the planets aligned. Everything was perfect. And it would have been practically perfect if we would have won the match.
What if?
You can't hold on to those things. You can't let it go. But Vince himself had said well, I think this is going to be a great play. We'll have this rematch for SummerSlam. This was so great. We can, build it up, and it can be even bigger. And somewhere along the lines, we came up with the TLC concept about how everyone kind of had their own personalized inanimate object that they use. Obviously Edge and Christian were the people that had the chairs, the Dudleys had the tables, and the Hardys had the ladders. And I can't remember verbatim who came up with the actual TLC concept as far as the name, table, ladders, and chairs. It was brilliant though. But Mick's promo right before we got to it, where he said tables, ladders, and chairs. Oh my! I know we'll talk about it, but that is what set it in stone.
Yeah. Well, what's fascinating is the chairs were not really established as Edge and Christian's gimmick at this point. So they had to get there, and that's what we're going to discuss here in this episode. So the next night after Foley loaded on Raw, you, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys actually have a triple threat match for the tag team titles. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a little bit of a curious decision to just do the match right there on Raw with no build coming off that pay-per-view. And we had that spectacular triangle ladder match at WrestleMania, so we're just unadvertised throwing it on Raw here. But we have the match. You hit a leg drop on Devon. Christian throws you out of the ring, and he steals the pin. So how about that? The Matt Hardy leg drop was good enough to get the pin that night. You just didn't score it, man.
Well, it happens. I mean, the Matt Hardy leg drop did a lot of damage, especially to me.
I was going to say more to you than the opponents. So.
Yeah. So it's always great when you do win with those moves, and it's hard to kind of get trained to do that because you always want to use your finisher and establish it as your finisher. But it is very important to once in a while win with a leg drop or once in a while win with a side effect. And I would try and do that whenever the occasion allowed that to happen. And that is something more important. It's something I would like to get back to now, currently, actually, also.
Well, it makes the match a little less predictable, right?
Sure, and it also adds a lot of equity to the false finishes as well.
Yep, and to your moveset. So you follow up with a win over Lowdown, which is D'Lo and Chaz, of course. I can't imagine we're going to spend a ton of time talking about D'Lo or Chaz on this podcast. I've met D'Lo. I really like D'Lo. He's a former University of Maine football player. That was the first school I ever covered professionally, so I had a little connection there. Any fun D'Lo or Chaz stories for us?
I mean, we knew Chaz from Smoky Mountain originally. We were with the Headbangers in Smoky Mountain, and then we got to work with him several times in WWE, obviously. And the Headbangers helped us out a lot. Like, whenever we were on the very basic developmental deal when we first started, we would make $300 a week, and we'd make $300 if we appeared on a show. That was our first contract, a developmental contract. And everything would be paid for. Our hotels would be paid for, and also our rental cars would be paid for because we weren't making a lot of money. We'd get the car vouchers, but you were technically supposed to be 25 to rent a car then. Sometimes I could kind of get away with it, and they would let me slip in and go, okay, well, we know who you are. You're a WWE wrestler. We'll let you do it. But we got to the point where we started having issues with it, kind of like multiple weeks in a row. And then the Headbangers, we set up a deal with them where I could sign over the car voucher to Chaz and Glenn, and they would get the car for us and we would ride together. So they helped us out earlier on, and we spent a lot of time with those guys on the road. So they were good brothers from that viewpoint.
What about D'Lo? You're looking at the real deal now? Yeah,
I mean, I get along great with D'Lo. The last time I saw D'Lo was actually in Vegas during Double or Nothing for AEW. He was out there doing maybe an indie show or maybe
he's still doing Impact work too. He's been involved with them heavily.
Yes, and I did see him last time I did Impact, but it was very, very random that I happened to run into him just as he was sitting there in our casino in Vegas. He was gambling and maybe having a drink or two, and just to sit back and catch up with him. It's always great when you see people like that because you immediately go back to yesteryear and you think about the times that you had together and the times that you've worked together, and it's always great to catch up with those people and see those familiar faces.
Dude, D'Lo is a boss. That dude is an athlete.
Yeah.
Boy, he still is built like an athlete, no doubt about that. So later that week, Gordon Soley actually dies. And many consider him to be among the best announcers ever. You actually had him on your Mount Rushmore of announcers. Is there anything that you remember about him and your childhood watching him?
Just more than anything, just his voice. I mean, his voice was so iconic. I mean, that is the thing that really comes to mind when I think about Gordon Soley. You know, his voice was so iconic. And I just remember turning on the TV and hearing his voice, and you automatically knew who it was. It was so identifiable. You know, it's almost like JR. JR's got that same kind of voice too. You know, he's just been on air and he's been a commentator and so great at it for so long. That's the thing I remember most about Gordon Soley.
He is JR's mentor. So yeah, that correct. Goes to show you pretty good lineage there.
Yes.
Yeah, Matt, I'd be remiss before we continue here. You talked about signing over the rental cars to the Headbangers.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, if there were any trouble, the Headbangers had Car Shield. And Car Shield is presenting you the extreme life of Matt Hardy this week because Car Shield makes it easy and affordable to protect your car from expensive repairs, and that's just for starters. Car Shield is the #1 auto protection company in the U.S. and offers protection plans for around $100 a month. The plans cover more parts than ever before, whether your car's got 5,000 miles or 150,000 miles, and it is so simple to get your car fixed. When you need a repair, you get to choose the mechanic, and Car Shield's administrators handle the rest. That is it. You don't have to deal with paperwork or headaches. You're taken care of. And the same goes if your car breaks down, you're stuck on the side of the road. Plans through Car Shield include coast-to-coast roadside assistance. How valuable would that have been back in the days without cell phones and GPSs and all that jazz?
All I have to say is thank God I have Car Shield now. It would have been crucial if we would have had it back in the day. Car Shield would have been great. And there's one story I specifically want to tell you now that we were talking about Chaz. My memory just got jogged. There was one point where we were all traveling together, and I was driving the car. I was driving. Chaz was shotgun. Glenn was in the back, and Jeff was in the back as well. And I'm driving the car, and we're following Mark Henry, and we're speeding to an event because we were all late, and our flights had been late getting in. And as we go around this big curve on an interstate, all of a sudden traffic is way backed up. And I slam on the brakes, and you see Mark Henry go to get slide off on the exit so he doesn't rear end anyone. And I go around Mark Henry, and there was a small retaining wall off this exit, and I go down and I end up on the retaining wall because I was going to hit a car if I didn't get on it. And we almost did like a rail slide you would see on a skateboard, and we slid down this car to the very end. And I'll never forget, in the car, Chaz was going, "Oh my God, Matt, please don't, I don't want to die, please don't, I don't want to die, please hold, please drive, Matt, please don't crash. And you hear Glenn doing that as well. "Oh my God, we're going to die, oh my God. And Jeff in the back says, "Hold it steady, Matt." As calm as he could be. Of course, Jeff, the psychopath, right? Who has no fear, who has no fear. And we actually survived, and we don't crash the car, and we got to the arena. I'll never forget, Mark Henry hugged us, and it was a miracle we did that. We actually bent the gas tank in half. I know I'd shared this before, but it was insane. And thinking back, I wish we had Car Shield then, because I could have just turned in the Car Shield and our car would have been taken care of.
Would have been incredible because they're there for you with other rental car options, trip reimbursement at no extra cost. Get your coverage today. Lock in your price now. It'll never go up. That means as long as you own your car, no matter how old it is, you're protected from rising costs of parts and repairs for your vehicle. Car Shield helps protect my wallet from expensive car repairs. They'll do the same for you. Go to carshield.com/podcast to start your plan and lock in your pricing forever. That's carshield.com/podcast. A deductible may apply. That story's so great. I love when you tell that story. So this was really fascinating. I found this in my research. I don't even know if you knew about this or if you remembered this, but a show on July 29th, 2000 was advertised in Shelby, North Carolina. How far is Shelby from Cameron?
Shelby's about 2.5 hours.
Okay. It drew 500 fans, and it was promoted by Dexter Holly. He advertised that the Hardys were going to be there. Your buddy Jimmy Valiant was going to be there. And the Rock and Roll Express were going to be there. But guess what? None of you were actually booked, nor did you appear. And the audience was livid. Do you have any recollection of this?
I do not.
Okay.
False advertisement happened quite a lot back in those days. People would do whatever they could do. Obviously, the business is still carny, but it was carny as fuck. back then, if you go back to, the 90s and 2000. So if they could put a few extra asses in seats by advertising the Hardy Boys or the Rock and Roll Express, there were people that weren't above it.
On Raw, you and Jeff beat Edge and Christian via disqualification at the Georgia Dome. Again, this is just one of those casual runnings of giant stadiums that WWE and WCW were able to do at the time. Christian pulls the ref, and then Jeff gets a double chair shot from Edge and Christian. So I wanted to, because these numbers were so big, and I think it's important to keep into context how hot wrestling is here.
Oh, yeah.
I want to put in perspective how business is. I know you like when I do this on these episodes because it blows my mind. It blows our audience's mind. So that week, Lita's actually in the main event with The Rock. She's teaming with The Rock against Triple H and Trish Stratus. The Raw main event draws an 8.46 overrun with a 15.4 share, which translates into 9,965,000 viewers. It makes it the 5th most watched wrestling match in the history of cable television at the time. The quarter hour that you're in that week, the segment with Edge and Christian,
right,
it outdraws WCW with a 6.22 share to a 2.03 share. So not only is viewership enormous for you guys in general, you are mutilating WCW. This is WCW's dying days here. Did you ever have anyone in WCW reach out to you at this time about coming over?
No, we didn't. I'm pretty sure they knew too. We were in 99, late 99 is when we signed official contracts, and it was our first contracts, for 75, 100, 125, 150. So we had 5-year deals, and I'm pretty sure they knew that all of the young talent had just got locked down around 99 or 2000, a 5-year deal. So no, we didn't have anybody reach out.
What about talent from WCW reaching out to you and being like, hey, this ship is sinking, can I come?
Yeah, I mean, there were guys like we knew Chris Canyon, obviously, from doing jobs back in the day. We met him in the mid 90s, early and mid 90s. So we stayed in contact with him a little bit. Obviously, Shane Helms and Shannon Moore, who were two of my closest friends at that time, stayed in contact with those guys. But there weren't a ton of guys, and I feel like until WCW went out of business, no one really believed it was going to go out of business. I mean, it was very shocking whenever that happened. And, even at the end when they were dying and they were about ready to go out of business, people thought Bischoff was going to buy the company and ultimately end up running the company. Yeah. So I think it was a shock when it actually ended up being bought by WWE. I remember how shocked I was, and I remember how I thought it was going to be a huge negative to the business as well, just being one company in pro wrestling. I thought it was definitely going to lead to tough times for the pro wrestlers, and it did. And it was hard for the fans as well, because once Vince really understood he was the only ball game in town, he kind of just had free reign. He could do whatever he wanted to do. There's
a correlation I want to point out that a lot of people don't discuss when talking about today's product. Today, they will say, look, those guys aren't over as they were in the Attitude Era. Like, Roman Reigns is never going to be as big of a star as Stone Cold Steve Austin was. Kenny Omega is never going to be as big a star as The Rock was. Well, look at the difference in the audience size there. Mm-hmm. People watching your random match against Edge and Christian in a 40,000-person stadium, you're drawing a 6.22 share, whatever the number was. So there are probably around 8.5, 9 million people watching your match on television. It's not comparable to today. Guys are going to become more popular when they're in front of 7.5 million more eyes. Sure. That's just the nature of the beast, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, but the whole entertainment world is so much. It's so diverse now. I mean, there's so much out there. If you go back to the late 90s, 2000, there was 50 or 60 channels. I mean, it seems like, at the end of the day, I mean, now there are thousands of channels. There's Netflix, there's Hulu, there's Amazon Prime. There's just so much content out there, and it is so diverse. So it's never going to be like that. It's still extremely popular, and most all areas of niche entertainment like that has niche audiences as well. But you still look at pro wrestling. AEW is half the time the number one show on all of cable that night. Same thing for WWE, for Raw and SmackDown as well. I mean, wrestling still does great, and considering how the product has broke down, and television programming has broke down into more niche groups. Wrestling still draws, and it does very well, and it's still popular.
If a game of the World Series did the numbers you guys did for that episode of Raw, they'd be head over heels these days.
Sure.
It's just how viewing habits have changed tremendously. So
yeah, and now so many people also watch from devices as well.
Mm-hmm.
TV is just, TV is a concept that it is slowly fading away. It will fade away and classify itself as obsolete. But it's one of those things. When it's all said and done, everybody's going to be watching programming on their smart device or iPad or whatever.
So on SmackDown, it's you versus Edge. Jeff again has been taken out here by the chairs. The angle, in my opinion, watching it back, doesn't age super well given all that we know about concussions now. But I know back then it was something that was leaned into quite heavily in a lot of storylines. It's a good little singles match between you and Edge. You're about to beat him with the twist of fate. Then Jeff, who you warned to stay backstage,
right?
He comes out to even the odds since that CLP is causing trouble for
Say
you.
Say it, John. Good job. All right. Yay. My hero, John Alba.
So he's causing trouble on the outside. He's going to hit a swanton on the outside off a ladder onto Christian. But as he reaches the top, he gets a little starry-eyed and he starts fading a little bit. And he wipes out, gets hung up in the ropes. It's a brutal bump. And as you check on him, you get a chair shot to the head. So my understanding and my outside perspective of this is the point of this is to start to get over and plant those seeds that the chairs are Edge and Christian's gimmicks. They can cuss Jeff Hardy. They just cost Matt Hardy with a chair shot to the head. Is that what we're going for here in the book?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, you are correct in that thought, John.
It's good storytelling.
And also, I was just going to say, Jeff had like a shoulder injury. He had something going on at that time where
he had an ankle injury.
No, I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was his ankle.
He was reported to have an ankle injury.
Yeah, I know. I saw it. He definitely hurt his ankle really bad during the triangle ladder match when he did the swanton, and he almost overshot the table that had Bubba on it. Like his ankle was like
it hit the concrete.
Yeah, it hit the concrete, and they were trying to work on his ankle and like put it back into the correct position because his ankle was really banged up after that. I want to say at this point it was like some sort of shoulder. It was like a minor injury where he shouldn't be taking bumps, like especially like doing flat back bumps over and over and over again, or flat bumps to his front. But he was off for a couple weeks because he was a little banged up and he was trying to heal.
But I do like utilizing this opportunity to establish that the chairs are Edge and Christian's thing here. Mm-hmm. I think that's effective storytelling. It's laying the character nuance a little bit on Edge and Christian.
Yeah, and we had already been established as ladder guys, especially because we won the first tag team ladder match, and then the Dudleys obviously were established as the table guys. They had been since ECW, especially the fans that followed him from there. So, as you said, it was very important to establish and tie the chairs specifically and directly to Edge and Christian. And that was our goal during this.
Next week's Raw, you, Farouk, and your best friend, Bradshaw.
Well, hell.
He must have been very excited to tag team with that young, good-looking, blazing trails Hardy boy, Matt Hardy, at that time.
He probably said something along the lines of this. Well, hell, I can't wait to see Matt Hardy get in here and take all these amazing bumps during the heat. It's going to be absolutely outstanding.
Well, it's a 1:38 match, so I don't think there's a ton of heat going on. It's Edge and Christian and Big Show. You guys beat them via DQ after, you guessed it, chair shots. But this time, it's Big Show on the APA, and you take a monstrous powerbomb from Big Show. So things are going very well for you, Matt Hardy. I just would like to point that out. You've lost a couple matches here. You've been taken out with the chair. You've taken a powerbomb from Big Show. Classic. Matt Hardy staring up at the lights.
Story of my career.
On Heat, you guys bounce back with a win over the Right to Censor with some help from Lita. What'd you think of the Right to Censor?
I thought it was an interesting gimmick, and it's so funny how it was kind of born out of Vince McMahon's rage and hatred of a legitimate group that was kind of like fucking with his business, right? They were very good heels. They got booed. People didn't like them, which if you were baby faces, you wanted to work with heels that are going to get booed. It made your job very easy to go out and get cheered and whatnot. Bull Buchanan was up for doing like some different crazy stuff. Godfather was a very simplistic, basic wrestler, and you knew what to expect whenever you worked with him. But
that's Good Father, Matt Hardy.
Yes,
the Good Father.
He was the Good Father then. Yes, that's right. The Good Father, I will always call him Godfather or Papa. but the Good Father and Bull Buchanan, we enjoyed working with him. It was easy. It was pretty simple. We knew we weren't going to be doing anything crazy. It wasn't going to be a match against Edge and Christian or Too Cool or the Dudleys. It was going to be much more simplistic, but that was okay because they were always really dedicated and they were good heels. So it made your job very easy as a babyface.
I was a RTC mark back in the day. I loved the right to censor.
Ivory was so good. And so
it was amazing. Yeah. And Stevie Richards was great too. Even just changing his name from Stevie Richards to Steven Richards, that's a small little thing that's easy heat. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Bull Buchanan, did you know his son is in NXT right now?
I did. I read that somewhere, which is cool. Yeah.
Brooks Jensen, he's one half of the NXT UK Tag Champions. So
right on.
I prefer, what was it, B squared or B2? How do you go about it with Cena? That was
B squared. Yeah.
B squared. Yeah, that was it. So that week on SmackDown, this is a great segment. I love this segment. It's actually one of my favorite segments in the build to this. So the Dudleys beat Edge and Christian via disqualification in a title match because Edge hits Bubba Ray with a chair.
Right.
Freaking POSs here. As Edge and Christian leave, you guys come out, you and Jeff, pronouns pal, and you throw Edge and Christian in the ring. Devon gets a table. You guys get ladders. You guys come off each ladder onto Edge. It's Event Omega. Bubba powerbombs Christian off the middle ropes through a table. I thought this was an awesome way to give Edge and Christian some comeuppance. Earlier in the night, they had Edge and Christian doing the vignettes with the cast of Highlander. I remember these. And the gist of the vignettes is that they're not stopped talking about beating you guys at WrestleMania, and facing you guys is boring to them. So they want nothing to do with you guys anymore, and you guys come out and just beat the absolute living shit out of them. It's a good piece of business there, and it's a good way to build towards TLC. What do you remember about that segment?
I do remember that the finale of that segment, you were talking about the Event Omega and putting those guys through tables. And yeah, I thought that was a great way. And we needed some steam as babyfaces going into this match as well, because it'd been very heavy on heat going into this big match.
I think you guys did. I'd have to go back into our archives, extremehardy.com, but I think you guys did a pretty similar segment for the triangle ladder match build as well. That was the one where I think it was either you or Jeff. I don't remember. I think it was you did the leg drop off the stage. Was around that time. So there's a lot of parallels in the build.
That was before the table match.
The table match. Okay. It was 2000 though. It was still 2000. You guys do these big schmas, like let's blow things up. I like these segments. Those are good to build for these big car crash matches.
That was our MO, man.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I'd be remiss if I didn't say I loved the Kurt, Triple H, and Stephanie love triangle angle, and Rock gets involved too, and you guys are going to be involved in that in just a few minutes here. But on Raw the following week, because this is 2000 in WWE, Matt Hardy, we need a good what the fuck moment in the build, and that's where
what is WWF WWE without a WTF?
RTC, Bull Buchanan and Good Father defeat you, Jeff, and Lita in a 2-on-3 handicap match. Lita takes the fall. But I'm breaking this down in my head. You guys are going into a triple threat TLC match. Right to Censor is not involved in that whatsoever. Lita just main evented with The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin 2 weeks prior on one of the most viewed matches in the history of professional wrestling.
Right.
And now you guys lose to the fucking Right to Censor a week before all of this crazy ballyhoo's about to go down. What is this? Please try and make sense of this for me, because I cannot.
This would be my guess, especially considering Vince's mindset and his thought process. I would guess Vince had B Squared and Papa Shango defeat the Hardys at that point. the RTC. He had them defeat the Hardys because we were right up until the event of SummerSlam. We were supposed to win the tag team titles, and my guess would he would have RTC defeat us, so that way you would have built-in challengers for new champions. That would be my guess. They would play that and go, well, the Hardys are the brand new champions, which obviously that got changed last minute. The Hardys are the new champions, but the RTC, Goodfather and Bull Buchanan, they actually defeated them a week ago. So could they defeat them again for the titles? And it was going to have a ready-made match for television. That would be my mindset. That was Vince's thoughts.
Do you agree with that mindset?
There's something to it. It's not terrible. Looking back in hindsight, I don't know if you want a team who you want to project as being strong to lose right before that match. I get that why you have someone defeat a team, especially if this team is going to be champions very soon, or a singles competitor is going to be a champion very soon, and you want to have a built-in challenger for them already. I do get that, and I think that's somewhat of an effective concept, but I think there's a time and place for that as well. And I don't think the week out before going into this big match, which is going to end up being a huge part of the pay-per-view and a huge selling point, I don't think you want your teams losing. I don't think you want the Hardys losing. I think you want the Hardys to look as strong as possible to help sell this pay-per-view.
Well, there's also the idea, and you've talked about this in the past, that Vince felt that because you guys were so over, he could give you guys a loss on a given episode and it would be fine.
Yeah, there were many times where Vince just said, we're Teflon, we're bulletproof. He said the Hardys don't have to win as long as the Hardys go out and they do their shtick and they are, do the adrenaline junkie Daredevil shtick. People are going to cheer them. They're beloved. We can't kill them off. That's where the whole Matt Hardy will not die, because as many times as they tried to kill me off, as many times they tried to kill the Hardys off, they just couldn't. We were Teflon to a degree.
One of the reasons Matt Hardy will not die is because Matt Hardy is boosting his immune system with AG1s by Athletic Greens. What am I talking about here, guys? I'm talking about one delicious scoop of AG1. You're quickly absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. It's a special blend of ingredients supporting your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, aging, all of those things. And Matt Hardy, I know you're on that fasting gimmick right now. This is the first thing you're putting in your body every day, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. AG1s is a game changer. And I've said it before. I'll say it again. I am so happy I came across AG1s and discovered them, because they have really changed everything for me, especially my gut health.
I really need to get more into the whole gut health thing, especially as we wind down the dog days of summer here, man. It's really starting to show itself. And the beauty is I can do that because even though I'm little money John, it costs me less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health. It's cheaper than your cold brew habit, cheaper than getting all those different supplements yourself. It is an all-in-one nutritional insurance investment that you can make. Tons of people take some kind of multivitamin. It's important to choose one with high-quality ingredients that your body will actually absorb. AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself, and your subscription comes with a year's supply of vitamin D, which is so important to add in those winter months as they approach when you're not getting as much sunlight. And it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system right now with convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop in a cup of water every single day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D. And how many free travel packs with your first purchase, Matt Hardy?
5 free travel packs. And John,
yes.
You've got to get in the habit of doing it every single day. These AG1s are crucial. We got to get you in that routine, because Father Time is coming for you.
It is.
You're about to get in your 30s, John.
I know.
It's time to do AG1s every single day.
I am, and all I got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Hardy. That is athleticgreens.com/Hardy to take ownership over your health, my health, and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And we thank them for sponsoring this podcast. So the right to censor thing, not great. Not great. I wish you had just told me to let it play out. That would have been a more than suffice answer to my question.
Matt Hardy will not lie. I can't justify that. I can't say let it play out. Not with that.
Thankfully, though, Matt, this episode is the famous one with Mick Foley. I'm going to break down this segment. It is an all-time great Raw segment. I remember watching it in my room and being enamored with it. So Edge and Christian are cutting a promo, bragging about their title reign. They're sitting on chairs. Again, we're establishing chairs are their thing. Mick runs them down for constantly trying to get disqualified in their matches and taking the easy way out. He says that they're going to have a match at SummerSlam and that the Hardys and the Dudleys cannot interfere with tables and ladders in their SummerSlam match. In fact, it's impossible to do that because they're going to be in their SummerSlam match with tables and ladders. He tells Edge and Christian, bring the chairs, because at SummerSlam, it's going to be Edge and Christian against the Hardys, against the Dudleys in a TLC match. Tables, ladders, and chairs.
Oh, my.
Tables, ladders, and chairs.
Oh, my.
Tables, ladders, and chairs.
Oh, my.
The crowd's going nuts. Jerry Lawler's eating this up. He's got them doing the whole Wizard of Oz gimmick. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. It's an all-time great Mick Foley segment that, in my opinion, highlighted how fantastic of a character he was as the commissioner. And it lays the groundwork for a stipulation that we still talk about today. Let's break this segment down, Matt. What did you think of it as you guys were there backstage seeing it unfold?
Iconic. I mean, immediately, like the way the crowd bid on it and the way they were so into it and so enthusiastically repeating it over and over, we knew it was something special. And it really helped highlight that match and make the match seem more important, especially with just that catchphrase. You really got the concept that tables, ladders, and chairs is what this match is all about. And everybody is utilizing those inanimate objects to try and capture the tag team titles. And all three teams had been associated with one of these inanimate objects. And it was just a great build, a great storytelling piece to really add a lot of equity and investment in our match.
And Mick as the babyface authority figure, which there's so few in wrestling history, babyface authority figures.
It actually work.
It works. They rarely work, but yeah. He makes this work in that regard too, because he's so likable. He's leaning into pop culture with this famous movie quote, and the crowd is biting at it. They are loving it. Jerry Lawler's repeating it. It's great TV.
Yeah.
And it helps elevate all three teams in the process, in my opinion, which is huge.
Without a doubt.
So that would be played in the intro segment leading up to the match as well. You actually lose to Kurt Angle on the following Sunday Night Heat, but the match gets pretty high reviews from the Sheets and the IWC. They say that it was a must-watch match on Sunday Night Heat. I'm going to have to go back and check it out. How good was Kurt here less than a year into his career on the main roster? We know that he's heading into the main event on this pay-per-view.
Kurt was great. I mean, Kurt was just such a natural. And one thing I always say about Brock and Kurt, because I worked with Kurt some, not a ton.
You were in developmental with him. You were at the Funkin' Dojo with him, correct?
Yeah. No, in the Funkin' Dojo, I mean, one of the first times we were just calling a match in the ring, and I put Kurt in the corner, and I chopped the shit out of him, and he looked at me like he was going to murder me. He was like, what the fuck? It just because he just didn't understand wrestling initially. But then, he turns into this machine. Unstoppable. But the thing you could always tell about Kurt and Brock, specifically those two guys, like when you felt them and their athleticism and their technique, you could tell they were real. And there were two guys you didn't want to get into like a legitimate scuffle with because they were real. And you knew they could fucking tie you up and take you down and choke you out, whatever they want to do. They would own whoever they wanted in that ring if it came down to it. So they both felt so real. They were so explosive because there's a lot of guys who are super strong. And there are a lot of guys that are fast, but those guys were both so strong and so fast, they were just explosive. Mm-hmm. And you knew these guys were real. That's the best way I can describe them.
Yeah, I'm entirely with you on that. It was really, really good business all the way around with Kurt. He had it, man. He had it. He's on several of my Mount Rushmores, so yeah. I'm with you on that.
And I think the thing that Kurt Angle, that what superseded everyone's expectations was his character and his personality.
Very much so.
They didn't expect that for him. They knew he was going to be an amazing athlete. He was a stellar athlete, a stellar wrestler, obviously, because he's an Olympic gold medalist, but his personality was so strong. I mean, it's unbelievable that he became the just incredible character he did.
He was up for anything, and Brian Gewirtz deserves a lot of credit for that. By the way,
yep.
I picked up Brian Gewirtz's book, and I just started reading it. If you haven't had a chance, Matt Hardy.
It's worth the while?
Oh, yeah. You need to go check that out.
I would like to. I like Brian a lot.
Yeah.
Once in a while, I'll have an interaction with him on a social media, on Twitter or something. But like, Brian was always good. Brian was always great for the young guys, and he was always open to ideas, and he always gave great feedback. I really enjoyed greatly working with Brian Gewirtz. I can't say enough good things.
You worked very closely with Edge and Christian, right?
Very, very much so. He was their guy. I mean, Brian Gewirtz was a big part of them becoming the amazing characters they did whenever they turned heel during the Triangle Ladder match at WrestleMania 2000. Yeah, he was heavily influential in their content and their personalities and also their scripting.
Go check out that book. It's out now. It came out last week. It's absolutely worth your time. On SmackDown, Edge and Christian beat Devon and Jeff. Devon and Jeff are tagging together here, which I thought was fascinating. But we have to create some dissension between the Hardys and the Dudleys. Sure. We haven't really seen any yet. So Jeff accidentally hits a swanton on Devon. Devon gets pinned. You guys get to pull apart. So I just, again, assessing.
WWE. Very typical WWE.
I assess it as we just need to get conflict between the Dudleys and the Hardys.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very, very much established who the Hills were, and they didn't want to make it seem like the Hardys and the Dudleys were going to team up as the good guys and destroy Edge and Christian. We definitely had to add some conflict between the two babyface teams.
Well, on the August 21st Raw, you and Jeff defeat the Dudleys when Edge hits Bubba with a chair, and Jeff gets a win. And Lita actually becomes the women's champion that night by defeating Stephanie. So prominent positioning here for all you guys across the board.
Right.
Which I think is good. And on SmackDown, you guys are in main event segment here with some of the biggest main event players. And I'm going to read this recap here. It's a lot of ballyhoo, but Dave is able to catch it up. And I just want you to try to encapsulate it for us after I read it. So here we go. This is on SmackDown. This is the lead-in. This is the go-home to SummerSlam 2000. Hardys and Jericho beat Edge and Christian and Benoit when Jericho pinned Edge. The Dudleys came out and brawled with Edge and Christian and the Hardys while Benoit and Jericho brawled. The main event was Rock and Lita against Stephanie and either Triple H or Kurt Angle. She couldn't decide who her partner would be, so she flipped the coin and Kurt won. Stephanie was then knocked out on the steps. Triple H came out, carried her off. Triple H later attacked Rock and knocked out the ref for a DQ. Angle and Triple H surrounded Lita, but the Hardys came out and attacked them. Rock then made a comeback on Angle and Triple H. Angle walked off from Rock, leaving Triple H with Lita, the Hardys, and Rock. And Rock gave him a rock bottom and people's elbow. Angle and Stephanie kissed for about 10 seconds afterwards, although Stephanie acted shocked. They did a big thing after the show, went off air with Triple H teasing a face turn and the crowd cheering like crazy for him, but he eventually turned on the crowd, so Rock left him laying with the rock bottom. So, a lot of stuff going on there. But I read it because you guys are being positioned with the major players in the company.
Yeah.
Rock, Triple H, Kurt's super hotties in the main event. They got a triple threat match. Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit. There's a lot going on, but it's good signs, in my opinion, for the Hardys all around. How are you guys feeling about your positioning here heading into the pay-per-view? And were you guys still planned to win the titles at that point, to go home before SummerSlam?
Yes, we were. It didn't change till like the night before SummerSlam is when Vince ended up pulling the trigger, and he said, well, we're in Raleigh. It's too obvious the Hardys are going to win. It's too obvious they're going to win. But that was okay, VKM. I think it's okay. It was actually our blow-off, and it was going to be in our hometown. The crowd would have been going banana, as the late, great Pat Patterson would say. But he just changed it, and he said he was going to do it the month later at Unforgiven during the cage match. But I really hate we missed out on that moment of winning the tag team titles in our home state in this first match of its kind, the TLC match.
I would argue right here at this moment in time, leading into this TLC match, you guys are in the main event of SmackDown with the biggest players in the company. Lita's the women's champion.
That was a star-studded segment.
You guys, I would argue this is one of the peaks of your popularity as a tag team here in WWE.
Right.
It's crazy that it's not Edge and Christian in the main event here. It's not the Dudley Boys. It's you guys and Lita. that says a lot about the equity that you guys had built up at that point. And I'm sure you guys were feeling it too.
Yeah, I mean, and once again, looking back in hindsight, I really wish, the history books read differently. I wish we would have won on that night. I think we had earned that, and I think it was 100% justified. And we were so over and so popular. But once again, it's like a blessing and a curse being like that, because Vince knew if we didn't win, it wasn't going to be a big deal. We weren't going to lose any steam, because he looked at us as being bulletproof and looked at us as being Teflon. Truly, when you're an act like that in pro wrestling, it's a blessing and a curse.
I understand that entirely. It's something that I think they leaned into a little too much, perhaps, over the course of your run, where you guys lost some matches that you probably should have won.
Sure.
But thankfully, and we will cover it later this year, at Unforgiven, you do get your win back. So we will talk about that. But
I mean that is Vince's mindset, and once again, it was clearly established at that point. If Vince made the decision, he was the only boss. That was one of the beneficial things I feel like about Vince. Like there were times in WCW at the very end when it was so chaotic, nobody was really sure who the boss was, right? And people were going to different people. I know I've had this conversation with Chris Jericho. He said like Luger had his guy, and Sting would have his guy, and Ric Flair had his guy, and they're going to all these different guys, and it wasn't like official. Who was the one person in charge? Who was the boss? And that was Vince. And if Vince said something, that is what was going to be. And he made up his mind that he thought it was too obvious, and that was set in his brain. It wasn't going to change, and we were going to change him. Even though, I think a lot of people recommended, I don't know, I think we should really keep the match as it was, and the Hardys went, no, it's too obvious. We'll do it the next pay-per-view. It's fine. They're going to win the titles. They're going to get their moment. Speaking of Vince, I want to jump in and throw the story, because we're talking about SummerSlam anyway. Right before I had the match with Edge at SummerSlam 2005, and this just came in my mind because this week I did 17 years ago today, said the net. So many people reported it was our SummerSlam 2005 match.
Are you about to talk about 2005 Edge, Matt Hardy?
I am. Yeah. I'm gonna give you everyone a little sneak peek of Vince McMahon and his mind. He was worried there was going to be tension between myself and Edge, so he called us into his office, and he was going to sit us down and talk to us, and also let us know how he wanted the finish of this match to go, specifically in detail. So we walk into the room, and we were getting along good at this time. There were moments where there was some tension, obviously, but Vince was going to talk to us both and make sure to lay down the law, so to say. So I remember myself and Adam, we sit in there. There's a couch across from Vince's chair, and we're sitting on opposite ends of the couch. There's probably 4 feet between us. We're sitting. And the first thing Vince says, he says, Adam, Matt, the WWE is my company, right? And we look, yeah. He says, that this event, SummerSlam, is my event that I created, right? And we go, yes. He says, that I have rented this venue for tonight, right? So this is basically my arena. Do you understand that? And we go, yes. He said, that wrestling ring out there? That is my wrestling ring. Do you understand that? Yes, we do. He said, I'm going to tell you about this right now. If either one of you go out there tonight and try and take liberties with each other, if you try and intentionally hurt one another, I am the most powerful man in this industry. I promise you, neither one of you will ever work a day in this industry again. Do you understand? And we go, yeah, sure, we understand. He said, okay, with that being said, I want to get into the psychology behind this match tonight. So it's not going to be a long match. I want to portray this as like an MMA fight. This is like a UFC fight, right? I don't want to see any hokey wrestling bullshit. It's going to be like a brawl, a fight, short and effective. And Matt's in here. He's kicking the shit out of Adam. You're a real piece of shit, Adam. So Matt kicks your ass the whole match. And then you've got some spot, right? You've got something picked out where Edge hits a lucky move, and then Matt hits the post, right? And all of a sudden his face is a crimson mat and a crimson mask, and he's bleeding all over, right? And that's where you are able to take the advantage, correct? Is that the spot you have? And we go, yeah, that's what we have. And we told him in detail the spot we were talking about doing. And he said, okay, great. I'm gonna explain something to both of you right now. This is really what I want to see. And this is basic psychology. This might sound crazy to you, but I have done many, many studies in the basic psychology of human beings and animals. He said, have you ever seen two animals in the wild kingdom when they're going to fight one another? Have you ever seen one animal wound another animal? And when it wounds that animal and the animal starts bleeding and it smells the blood, it gets bigger It swells up, it grows, and it just wants to kill the other animal. Do you know what I'm talking about? He said, listen to me, these are your primal instincts. This might sound crazy, but when two animals, their primal instincts kick in and survival kicks in, and it's their basic primal instincts. And we all have them. We all have them, even as human beings. If you see someone weaker than you see someone that's crippled or in a wheelchair, deep down your primal instincts, you want to destroy them. You want to eat them. You want to eat them alive. That is what we do. That is what human beings do to one another. That is our basic primal instincts. If you look at a primal human being and the psychology behind it, that is our instincts. You want to take the person that is weaker than you, that is below you in the food chain, and you want to fucking eat them. Do you understand? That's what I want to see out of this match. And Adam and I, now, we had got so freaked out from Vince's monologue. We were sitting beside each other, almost like cuddled with one another, like, what the fuck? Yes, we understand. We will follow this to a T. Thank you very much, boss. And as time ticked on down the road, myself and Adam, we think Vince brought us in there and he tried to like freak us out to like bond us, to give us something to talk about. And really like we were on that page. Everything about that match was super professional. But Vince went crazy. He went insane. He told us, have you ever seen a crippled person or a person in a wheelchair? You want to eat them. That's a quote. He said that is basic instincts, human psychology, us at our core. And I swear to God, man, me and Adam have said many times since then, man, maybe he just did that to really try and give us something to talk about how fucking insane he was. And that was his psychology behind that. It helped bond us before that match. But that is a story. I'm sorry. I just had to share it because I just revisited it this week. And that shows some of the genius and the insanity of Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
On the flip side, he could have just been out of his fucking mind.
Well, I'm not gonna rule that out either.
Okay. Primal instincts. How many F-bombs were dropped in that conversation?
Oh my God, who knows?
Okay.
Double digits. All
right. Because you censored it, so I appreciated that. That was wow. And did it?
I had to use a little bit to do the story justice.
Did it succeed in bringing you guys a little closer again?
It did. It did. It gave us something to bond about. Vince's insanity, Vince acting like a psychopath, talking about eating people in wheelchairs, definitely helped us bond and talk about how crazy he was.
Acting like a psychopath or being a psychopath?
Either or.
Okay, gotcha.
Take your choice.
So now it's time for a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. And I cannot say this enough. Since we started pairing with BetterHelp, I have had so many people reach out to me and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. I did not know that I needed a service like this in my life, but boy, did I, and I can attest to this as well. We take care of all these different elements of our body. When our knee aches, we go get it checked out. When our shoulders ache, we go get it checked out. You should be doing the same for your mental health. Our brains work in mysterious ways, and there's no shame in making sure that you are getting the right kind of treatment for it. That is where BetterHelp Online Therapy comes into play. Matt Hardy, you and I have talked about the importance of mental health and the importance of overcoming some of those hurdles that all of us deal with. And BetterHelp is there for you with convenient video, phone, or even live chat only therapy sessions that if you don't want to see anyone on camera for, you don't have to. It's totally okay. It is convenient and professional. BetterHelp is changing the way approaching helping yourself with professionals is done. How grateful are you for them pairing with us here on The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy?
Extremely grateful. And I can't say enough good things about BetterHelp. And a lot of people have reached out to me. There's a lot of people that are utilizing BetterHelp, and they really do. They sing BetterHelp's praises. And I am so happy we have joined with them and we're working with BetterHelp. It is a great program.
It is a fantastic program. You sign up and they give you a questionnaire that they will tailor their unique therapy process to just for you. And again, as I said, if you don't necessarily feel comfortable talking to someone visually eye to eye, you can do it on the phone, or you could even do it over text. Therapy over text is blowing my mind. But you can do it if that's what's comfortable for you. Because therapy, it's important to be comfortable. I've been in that situation recently, and I didn't even tell you about this, but recently I felt like I needed to check myself back in for some help. And I decided to take advantage of our partnership with BetterHelp and give them a shot. And I thought it was fantastic. The therapist that they paired me with was able to customize my experience and get down to some of the very small, minute details that I was looking for a little bit of help with. They were able to give me a sense of serenity that I had been searching for in that moment, and that was so helpful for me. I'm so grateful for that. And they want to help all of our listeners too, Matt, which I think is the coolest thing about our partnership with them. You head to
Absolutely.
Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/Hardy. That's better, HELP.com/Hardy. Again, it is convenient professional therapy at your fingertips, at your computer, however you want it. This is changing the game, isn't it, Matt?
Absolutely. And it's one of those things, if you feel like you need help, if you would really like to reach out to someone and get some assistance, give BetterHelp a shot, because they are great. It is an amazing program full of amazing people, and so many people have benefited from using BetterHelp, so you can too.
Again, 10% off your first month. This is huge. BetterHelp.com/Hardy, and we thank them for sponsoring our podcast. Okay, Matt, SummerSlam 2000, we're finally here. This is considered to be one of the better SummerSlam pay-per-views ever. Mm-hmm. It is a sellout in Raleigh, North Carolina. How far are we talking from the Hardy compound? About an hour here?
50 minutes.
50 minutes? Perfect. 17,000 fans, specifically 17,002 fans, which is 15,603 paying, $1,151,940, as well as another $147,815 in merchandise. It's the seventh highest live gate in the history of American pro wrestling at the time, and the first $1 million gate for an event other than WrestleMania in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Magnificent. And the legend, Claude G., our father, he was there. He was in attendance that night.
That's very cool. Mm-hmm. Was this his first time seeing you on pay-per-view in person?
Yeah. It was his first time seeing us on pay-per-view in person, for
That's
sure.
Very cool.
He would come to all the local events whenever we were there, but typically it was like a house show, and he'd been to a TV a time or two. But it was very cool to have him there in the house during the first ever TLC.
How amped were you and Jeff for the show?
Psyched. We knew it was going to be great. I mean, we were very popular and we were very over at that time already, but just to be in front of your fellow North Carolinians, and basically the biggest market, that you could kind of work in as far as being your hometown area, we were super pumped for it.
How were you feeling after you got the word from Vince that you weren't winning?
Disappointed, I'm sure, but we were professionals. We were going to go out and do our job to the best of our ability.
Let me ask you this, because I love enlightening with this podcast. There's a lot of wrestlers that listen to this podcast. There are plenty of wrestlers who I'm sure have thought they were going over in a match in a big program or something like that, and then they've had the rug pulled out from under them just like that. What's your biggest piece of advice to those talents that are in situations like what you and Jeff were in on this particular night?
I mean, you have to understand, when it's all said and done at the end of the day, we are professional wrestlers, and what we do isn't a legitimate shoot contest, and things change and you just deal with it. And you go out and you don't put on the boo-boo face. You don't bitch and complain about it. You go out and you do your job to the best of your ability, and you just know that better days are going to come. So it's one of those things. You can be disappointed in that moment, but if you go out and you kick ass and you work as hard as you possibly can, and you still have a great match, you're still going to win when it's all said and done.
Well, you have your work cut out for you in this match, because before your match, Steve Blackman and Shane McMahon have a hardcore match.
The Shane McMahon bump of the night.
Well, this is before Shane McMahon bumps of the night were a popular thing, because this is the first one. Shane takes one of the most insane bumps you're ever going to see. takes a kendo stick to the back while they're on top of the Titantron on the side of it. And he falls into a crash pad below. It looks like it's out of a cartoon, how high he was and how he falls here. Were you 6 men aware that bump was going to take place? And how'd you guys feel about that? Because that's taken away a little bit from the insanity of what you guys are about to put yourself through.
I think we knew they were doing it because they rehearsed it earlier in the day and they had a big crash pad set up. But we didn't care.
No, not at all.
We weren't about. We were extremely confident in our abilities and what we were going to do and the match we were going to produce. So we didn't care one bit.
Because you're running the risk there. Not you guys intentionally, just saying overall here. Yeah, that TLC match was cool, but how about that Shane McMahon bump?
Right. Yeah, no, we didn't care. We weren't fazed by it.
Okay. Those Hardys, Edge and Christian, the Dudleys, they're confident in what they're about to do. It is TLC 1. Now, normally, guys, when we did a watch-along here, we'd show it on the screen on Matt Hardy brand, but we're changing the way we're doing things. So if you have Peacock, head over to the cock, queue up SummerSlam 2000, and the time code is going to be 12900. So hard 1 hour, 29 minutes. And that's going to get us to the beginning of this match. Matt and I are going to be watching on our respective devices. Matt, if you have any ads that pop up, because Matt doesn't have the ad-free gimmick. So if you have any ads that pop up, that's why
I recommend getting ad-free shows.
That's right. Adfreeshows.com. You get all the podcasts on our network free.
Sorry, I couldn't resist, John. Sorry. That's stepping in your territory, but I saw that opening.
That's by all means. Totally cool. We'll always promote AFS here because the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy drops early and ad-free every single week.
It does.
But 12900. And Matt, if your ads happen, just let me know and I'll give you the time code to catch up on once they classify themselves as obsolete. And we're going to watch SummerSlam 2000 and answer some questions while we do it. Are you ready, my friend?
Yes, and I'm confident the 7 deities are going to take care of me. We're going to get through this without an ad.
All right, let's do it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. And we've got Edge and Christian's entrance to lead us off here after the video package that had the tables, ladders, and chairs. Matt and I, as I said, did this as a watch-along for adfreeshows.com where we dug a little more into that.
Look at those glasses the CLP has on.
Look at them. Well, they wanted to put a blue dot over his face at one point. They should have just had these glasses. That would have made up for that.
I know you had mentioned that a couple of times. I wasn't even fully aware of that story.
Really?
I actually had Jay give me the whole lowdown about it later. And apparently Vince just said he had just an unlikable face and he hated his face. He said, I think it would be a great idea if we just put a blue dot over it. It'd be great heat. Lo and behold, I didn't even know. I guess that was I wasn't even aware of this old facet tale.
In hindsight, it's a pretty good idea, isn't it?
No, it is. Yeah, there'd be something there for sure.
Just the logistics, logistics of having a dot that followed him around in all of his matches while he was doing moves.
Speaking of Botchamania, that'd been some good content for Botchamania for sure.
Oh, yes, for sure. Well, here come the Hardys, and they're not going to waste any time. They are going to run right to their... Why'd you guys run right to the ring here?
I think we were wanting to get right into it, I'm pretty sure, and I think we wanted to be fired up. I love how Jeff ran around that table.
Yes. Look at that side. Look at that side. Jeff Hardy, don't die.
Yeah. We're still saying that nowadays.
Yes, we are.
I do love how we incorporate... We do a great job of building with the inanimate objects during this match, I feel like. Even how we grabbed a chair right from the jump, and we're just utilizing the chair first, and then we build to a ladder, and then we build to a table. But there's a very good build in this match, and I would probably guess we had a lot of help with, from Michael Hayes with that.
How insane are you guys to just throw the chairs like that? Bubba taking that at projectile missile range from you?
I mean, if you're a professional wrestler, you're already insane. I mean, it is crazy what we do. I mean, you've had enough of a taste of it to know, like, your body, flesh and bone, is not meant to be slammed on wood and steel night after night after night after night after night. So you have to be half-ass insane to be a pro wrestler as it is. So, I mean, we just took it to the next level here with, the TLC matches and the ladder matches and table matches and everything else.
I like that we are incorporating each element one by one.
Yeah, for sure. That's just what I was saying. I mean, the build was so great, and that was the order we had decided to classify things in order of importance. There was the chair. We utilized it a little bit. We established it as a weapon, whatever. And then we bring the ladder in, and we utilized the ladder as a weapon right from the jump with that little spot that Bubba and Edge just did.
Well, and it had to be the chairs first because the chairs were the focal point of the feud. So it had to be the chairs first.
Even this, I know I've said that, like Bubba had his leg caught in the ladder there. He very lucky the ladder didn't ricochet back and hit him in the face and knock his teeth out or whatever. That's something you have to be very careful about if you're taking a bump off a ladder, because if your foot is like too far in on the rug, it is going to get hung in the rungs every time. So you have to be very careful about that when bumping off ladders. Something I've learned over my years of doing it.
His knee could have gotten caught in there and torn an ACL too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're getting into it real quick. We're already taking big bumps off the ladder.
Did you guys have time cut, or did you hit your time?
I'm sure we did. I mean, even from our entrance, I feel like we would have milked and soaked up that entrance a little more. And just we got into action so fast. I'm sure we had some time cut here. Of course, we weren't the main event guys. We weren't the guys who weren't seen as selling tickets, although the matches we were having were without a doubt selling tickets and also pay-per-views. We were always going to be the match that got time cut off if the show was running heavy.
I'm going to disagree with your assessment there, though, because we talked about this a little bit in the Triangle Ladder match episode. That match showed that you guys could go out there and sell tickets and be in prominent spots, and I think the proof is in the pudding that you guys, as we just established, were in that main event segment on SmackDown where they trusted you guys in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with that. I think we were selling tickets to live events. We were selling tickets to TV events. We were selling pay-per-views at home because people wanted to see what kind of crazy stunts we were going to do next. I'm just saying, in order of importance, when it came to the top acts that were selling tickets, we were always going to be the guys that got time shaved off. It wasn't going to be Rock. It wasn't going to be Triple H. It wasn't going to be Mick Foley. It wasn't going to be those guys that were already top-tier main event players.
Those seesaw spots, man.
Yeah.
They get
Jeff loved those seesaw spots. He had an addiction to the seesaw spots. I was the only one that was willing to take that, I think. I think people were afraid, so I volunteered to do it.
And rightfully so, they were afraid, as we would see.
Yeah. All right, so we've got the chairs and the ladders established very strongly as weapons, and we got a good point here. This was almost a little bit. I would have a little bit of a tweak when it comes to creative. Like everybody was down, and Devon moved the ladder from the center of the ring to the corner so they could do the "What's Up" spot. But like I feel like in a later TLC match, we wouldn't have done that spot this way. We would have found a way to make it work differently, because I hate the fact that the ladder was underneath the titles and Devon didn't go up and try and win the match. So this is where I said the psychology of these matches got stronger as we got deeper into them.
But the psychology of this match is a step up from the WrestleMania one.
100%. 100%.
Get the tables, man. It's the most over 3 words in wrestling history. Get the tables.
I mean, it was insane how big of a reaction that would get every single night. It would happen on the house shows. It would happen at the TV. I mean, it just every night the whole crowd would say it in unison with Bubba.
How many tables would you estimate the Dudley Boys have put you through?
Oh my God, we might be creeping into 3-digit territory. A bunch. There were times where we'd go through tables on house shows with those guys as well. So a bunch.
Here we go. We talked about this on our Matt Rushmore episode. One of the most over moves, the 3D.
And believe you me, Bubba was going to make sure Christian was going to sell that 3D for an appropriate amount of time. I remember that. I remember when we were putting this match together, he was talking about that. I said, well, you've got to be selling for 8 minutes, if you take, the 3D, whatever. I was like, well, keep in mind, Bubba, I mean, the 3D keeps someone down for a pinfall, which is 3 seconds. I don't know if it has to be 8 minutes. It needs to be down for at least, 30 seconds or whatever. But 3 seconds before wins the match. I mean, that's required time to stay down.
Dudleyville construction agency here.
This was probably, I remember we like marked this off many times earlier in the day. I wouldn't even be surprised. Well, the other 2 tables were set up, so we'd set them up before. There's been times where we'd had certain stunts we're going to do where we'd put like tape on the floor, where we know we would want the table to go just a little piece or bit of tape. That's like a magician sharing his secrets. But I do know this deal right here. Bubba actually went through it several times as far as like walking up the ladder, knowing the exact rung he had to be on, knowing the exact position of where the ladder was going to be. And you could tell Bubba was a little intimidated by the stunt, especially when he climbs up the ladder later on in the match, right before it goes up. He's looking to make sure those tables are there.
You'll see it.
I promise you, buddy. They're not going to disappear.
All right, here we go. Some Hardy Boy magic here.
Yeah, and see, I like this spot though because the ladder was already there. We didn't move it. We had our opponent in a very in the proper position to drop these legs on him, but we didn't move the ladder, so it didn't take away from us trying to not win the match.
And we know that leapfrog gets super over based on our No Mercy ladder match.
Super iconic. That's right.
Let's do it. I want to get some Ask Matt questions in here while we're doing this. And Lucas asked, and this kind of builds off your question, your answer before, rather. How much of the match was practiced beforehand?
I mean, we really didn't technically practice anything. We brainstormed on what spots we wanted to do, and we had a good layout of the match. The main thing that I remember we went over time and time again, Bubba went over specifically because he wanted to be as safe as possible, and I do not blame him, was just making sure that the ladder was in the correct position, the tables were in the correct position, and that he knew where he was going to fall was specifically through the middle of those 4 tables that were set up outside. So that's one thing that we went over several times. As far as like climbing up stuff and like going through particulars, we didn't do that. I mean, we'd done all this stuff already. We just decided what we're going to do, and we tried to, put it in a format that was going to be the safest way possible. We became very good at like trying to calculate risk factors. We're going to do stuff that seems crazy, that seems super dangerous.
Speaking of which,
there's Jeff who refuses to not be on the top of the ladder.
And he eats 2 tables as Bubba gets out of the way.
Yeah,
that couldn't have felt too good.
I'm sure that was very impactful for sure. Actually, the one thing too, like we measured the rung I had to be in, and we had a good grasp on where I wanted the ladder to be. Whenever I take the bump at the very end of the match, where I go backwards out of the ring through the 2 tables, and that was a pretty scary bump. That's one of the scariest bumps I've ever taken, actually, because it had to be perfect. Because if it wasn't perfect, it could have went very, very wrong.
Is Jeff doing that spot and missing Bubba a callback to the triangle ladder match where he hit him?
Yeah, I would suggest so. Yeah, it definitely was. And we're at that point in the match already where we're starting to, try and have people take big bumps so they can be down for a certain amount of time, so we can limit the number of people that are doing spots in the ring.
You got the mega ladder in the ring. I call that the Jeff Hardy ladder.
Oh my God, yeah, huge ladder. It's probably a 12-footer. It could be 14. We had 12 and 14 footers, but I am guessing that's a 12-foot ladder.
Let's see.
All kinds of. We look like kids on a big jungle gym. Everybody's climbing up.
That's really what it does look like, yeah.
Yeah.
Crandon asks, what was going through your mind throughout the match, knowing that you and your brother received arguably the loudest reaction of the night?
I mean, it's always humbling. It's super flattering. But we also kind of expected to get a big reaction because we were, in our hometown, and like we were obviously going to be the crowd favorites. People want to see their fellow North Carolinians, the guys who had, really dug and scrapped and clawed to become successful and have at this point. They want to see us win the tag team titles in this match. So it was very cool, and it just says a lot about how over we were at that point as well.
There you go. You see Bubba looking at the tables.
It's there.
Moving the ladder. And he was perfectly under the belts, and he moved it after that.
Houdini or Copperfield did not make those tables disappear.
Nope.
They are there.
Here we go. No turning back now, bully.
Perfect. Practically perfect.
Yeah. Crowd's going nuts. They've never seen anything like this before.
Imagine if we had another TLC match and we did a callback where we had 2 guys go through 4 tables.
That would be pretty wild. He is dead. DED.
Yeah. Yeah, this was definitely the point where he was eliminated from the match.
I would sure hope so. You also have to worry about those tables slipping off one another, too, in that bump.
True. That is a possibility as well.
Because one of the tables didn't even get touched. You see it there standing on the outside still.
Yeah. He actually, his momentum and the inertia behind it actually just pushed him through the far table on the bottom. But, I mean, he hit it perfect. And sometimes that's the case in those scenarios, too. Like, even if you hit right in the middle, sometimes you obviously still keep going and you'll break the outside table.
All right, so Bubba's out. He gone.
Yep.
Here comes Lita. Because, again, we're leaning into Team Extreme. And I've told you this, Christian is one of my favorite rope crotchers ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the rope crotch as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan of it.
Yes. I don't know, there's something about the visual of Christian getting rope crotch that I just really enjoy.
Yeah. He probably hurt his CLP.
He did.
Probably. That would be my guess.
Okay, so good storytelling here. Again, Lita's been heavily involved in the build to this, so she helps you out. Now it's you. You're setting up the ladder here. And again, this is going to give us something to build up to in TLC 2 eventually as well.
Yeah. Let me see. Hopefully I don't look back here.
Oh boy, Matt. You're looking down, but you're not looking back.
Yeah.
And see you later.
So, the 2 big risk in that, if I go too far, my neck hits the barricade and it breaks my neck. And if I go too short, my feet hit the top ropes and then I fall backwards on my head on the apron and breaks my neck. So,
and then this vicious spear from Edge where they'll show it again on replay, I'm pretty sure, but did her head clip the ladder or it just came dangerously close to?
It did. Just barely.
Yeah,
just barely.
That's scary, but look at the wild.
I really wish too. Even I remember afterwards. I wish Devon would have gave me another second to actually get my hand on the title and actually grab the strap like I was going to unbuckle it. I think we could have got a little bit closer there, but in hindsight, it was still great. I mean, I touched the belt.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It took it away at the last second.
It was amazing. It was that the scariest bump of your life?
That was that's up there. That was definitely one of the most dangerous and scary bumps that I've done. But fortunately, it happened with perfect precision.
All right, tell us the story here, Matt. This is a famous wrestling tale about your friend Devon Dudley here.
Devon Dudley is terrified of heights, first and foremost. And the way we kind of constructed this match, it kind of came down to him and Jeff. And there was a point where it had to be 2 baby faces. And of the Dudleys, we talked about even switching out and letting Bubba do it, but it just made more sense to have Devon hanging up there. So the funny thing is when they're up there and they're hanging, Jeff didn't give a shit. He was not afraid at all. He was hanging and he was kicking Devon like crazy, right? And he said, "Stop kicking me, Jeff! Stop kicking me!" He's worried he was going to get knocked off earlier or whatever. And Devon said, "I just want to take a great flat back bump," and he did. That's
great. Yeah. And there we go. Edge and Christian, man. They're the last 2 men standing.
When they won these titles was massive too. There was a huge round of boos because people really wanted to see us win. And I'm not going to change my mind because, it was a great win for the Hills. And it was great heat or whatever bullshit excuse you want to use. I really wish we would follow through and we would have won and had that hometown victory.
Wow. I feel like I need a cigarette after watching that match. It's
remarkable. It's amazing. And one of the most fantastic things about it, I think, is that stupendously, it still holds up in this day and age. I mean, if this was a match that happened in 2022, it would still be viewed as an amazing match.
It does. It's an amazing match, but I'll tell you what, it's still, in my opinion, as does WrestleMania, it still pales in comparison to what you guys pulled off at WrestleMania X7. It's really, I think TLC 2 is just on that next level.
I agree.
and I cannot wait to cover that match with you, which we're going to get into this coming spring on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, because that's going to be a very special one to look back at. But Dave gives the match how many stars? Did you see how many stars he gave it? Or
well, it was 4 and something. Was it 4.5?
4.5. How do you feel about that?
Sure. I don't know. I don't put too much investment into star ratings in matches. The numbers I'm most concerned about are the numbers that are on my paycheck whenever it comes every 2 weeks.
Very true. But he brings up a really interesting point in the Observer after this about the dangers of the match. Mm-hmm. He says, as the bar raises once again, the question becomes, when does the bar hit the breaking point?
Right.
And he'd go on to talk about, because also in the main event, keep in mind, it's a fantastic triple threat match between Kurt Angle, The Rock, and Triple H, but Kurt gets legitimately concussed, and he has to work the match on his feet, or out on his feet, I should say. Triple H and Rock lead him through the rest of the match. He's totally out, and he retains his championship in it because he's just so damn good still somehow. But it's clear that he's out, and they're still running that match. And then plus, you guys are having this match, plus Shane is taking the gigantic 30-foot bump. There's a lot of imagery here that could potentially be viewed as influential in a negative way to not just a generation of wrestlers, but people who are watching this at home. And this is around the time when WWE is really hitting those "please don't try this at home" PSAs that you're seeing on every single Raw and SmackDown because of matches like this. Did you guys push that bar a little too much, in your opinion, in hindsight?
No.
And why not?
I think it was just the evolution of wrestling. I think wrestling became something different during the whole Attitude Era anyway, and it was sparked and driven by the Monday Night Wars. But I think too, it was time, once we opened Pandora's box and kind of gave everyone the secret of pro wrestling, so to say, let them see the man behind the curtain, which ultimately ended up being VKM then. I think it was time for wrestling to go in new directions and try new things. People know they're watching entertainment more than anything else, and it's time to do new things. And I think the TLC match was just such an amazing concept, which allowed for so much different and creative storytelling. And it's still a concept to this day, which I hold in very high regard, and I'm very proud of that fact. So no, I don't think it was too much, and I think pro wrestling at its core is dangerous, as it is anyway. If you're taking a bump, being slammed on your back or on your head, it's dangerous in the first place. So, you can tell these stories in a different way, and it also adds variety to the card as well. And I think wrestling is at its best when it's a variety show. I know I've said that in the past, but I really do think it is. I think if you have 8 straight up wrestling matches on one show, on one card, it's going to get a little repetitive. But if you have, like a cage match, or there's a street fight, or there's a TLC match, or a ladder match, or a table match thrown in there, where there's a little bit of a different feel to each match, I think it makes the show better and stronger and a lot more fun to watch.
Let's get a few more questions in here before we wrap things up on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Kyle says, Matt, how do you feel about a pay-per-view or a premium live event being named after the match you made famous? Did it dilute it, in your opinion, or are you flattered at the name of the pay-per-view?
Very flattered at the name of the pay-per-view. And I know all 6 men, the forefathers of the TLC match, we're all very proud that it became a staple of pro wrestling, and that it will live on forever in wrestling history. And it's something that we were creators of. We were the ones who, started off in a forest. There was the TLC forest, and we started cutting and clearing out a path right from the jump, and we started paving a road through it, and we were responsible for creating it. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing depends on your view, I guess. But no, I'm very proud of that fact.
The only counter I will give you is that sometimes you're then having TLC matches just for the sake of having them, and they don't feel earned. I feel the same way about Hell in a Cell and Elimination Chamber as well.
Yeah.
Hell in a Cell was the blow-off to a blood feud.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you got a pay-per-view where, okay, these guys are having a Hell in a Cell match because, well, that's the event. Sometimes that happens with TLC as well.
Yeah.
Is that a fair point?
Sure. That's a fair assessment, but I would put that blame on whoever's telling the story. I feel like the stories have to be ready to climax in these matches. They have to be the blow-offs and finish the story. And however these stories are being told, the story must be at a point that it is worthy of being in a Hell in a Cell match, or it is worthy of being in a TLC match.
Josh asks, and this is kind of building off how we saw Jeff team with Devon earlier. Mm-hmm. If Matt had to have the same match and had to rotate partners, who does Matt think he would have had the best chemistry with as a tag partner?
For someone that was already in the match?
Someone who's already in the match.
Christian. Yeah.
CLP.
Yeah, I would pick Christian, my frenemy. We're the best of friends and the worst of enemies.
Callie asks, what was your favorite moment from the match?
My favorite moment from that match, personally, I would say, is the bump I took going backwards over the top rope through the two tables in front of the barricade. Just, because there was such a great risk, and that's a bump that had never been taken before, never been seen before, and we were able to pull it off practically perfect. So I was very proud of that. That'd be my favorite moment of the match.
You've explained why they made the pivot here, but Ben Myers wants to know, why did Edge and Christian win the Triangle Ladder match and both TLC matches? I don't think Vince looks back at stuff like that. They should have won the Triangle Ladder match. That was 100% the right decision. I think we should have won the first TLC match. Obviously we were slated to win, but that got changed, and we won the titles at Unforgiven after that. And then the next match, I mean, this is maybe a politically correct answer. People could say it'd be nice if each of the three teams won one of the matches, but even at WrestleMania 17, if it was in the best interest to have Edge and Christian as the heels winning, I'm down with that. We were all going to have great performances. I feel like ultimately the reason they won all the matches, even though they weren't supposed to win the first TLC, it's just because Vince was so into them as heels, and he loved that. And it's so much harder to build an over heel team than it is an over babyface team, or especially in those days it was. Samuel wants to know, was there a crazy spot that you guys wanted, but it didn't happen?
No, there was nothing that we suggested that we didn't get to do. I mean, I could have seen, later down the road, the bump that Bubba took, and then later myself and him took together through the four tables, and the bump I took going backwards, and also the bump Devon took off hanging from the rings that were holding the titles. I could have seen those maybe, been shot down, later on, once we think about like concussions and injuries and know how much more serious damage your body can get from those things. But at that time, everything we wanted to do and asked to do, we got to do.
Two more questions here, and then we'll wrap up. Zach asks, fantasy booking here. If you could replace Edge and Christian and the Dudley Boys in that match, who would the other two tag teams be? So any two tag teams. Who are you putting in a TLC match with you?
I would say
the Bucks.
The Bucks of Youth, and then I would go with the Lucha Brothers.
Yeah. Can't disagree with that.
Bucks of Youth, Hardy Boys.
Can't disagree with that. That's a good choice. I would have loved to have seen the New Day in there with you. Maybe the Usos.
Yeah. Usos would have been good too, yeah.
Lots of good choices there. And our last question comes from Mike. How would this match have been different had you not had the prior ladder matches from WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy 99? And was there any consideration into making this the main event? I would guess to say that there probably wasn't any consideration to make it the main event, given the main event that they had for this pay-per-view of Triple H versus Rock versus Angle.
You're correct in that assumption. There was never a plan to make that the main event. And like Vince isn't going to put a tag match in the main event slot of his pay-per-view. That's he wouldn't have done that. Any other question? I'm sorry.
How would this match have been different? Had you not had the prior ladder matches?
I just don't think it would have been as good.
I don't think it would have happened.
Yeah. You're right. It wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have already started, blazing that trail. But two, if it did happen and we end up doing it, I mean, once again, we would still be kind of like just figuring out, getting our feet underneath us, kind of, cutting our teeth in these ladder matches. So I just don't think it would have been as good. It wouldn't have been as high of quality as it was.
The beauty of this TLC tables, ladders, chairs chronicle that we were doing on this podcast, and it's my favorite part about diving into these stories with you, is we are seeing how one event led into the other. Yeah. We're seeing how No Mercy ladder match, and it's why we wanted to start this whole podcast with No Mercy 99, because that ladder match lays the groundwork for the tables match at the Royal Rumble, which lays the groundwork for Triangle Ladder, which lays the groundwork for TLC 1, which lays the groundwork for TLC 2. There's synergy there. Whether it was conscious or not, it all leads into one another to tell what I think is a really great story, all things considered.
Right.
Was that consciously what was going on behind the scenes with you guys?
Yeah, I think so. Especially once we found our footing with these concepts, I think so. And we understood that build, and we continue to try and build as well. Not only for the angle of the whole feud and program with the three teams, but also in context of building each match, on top of one another.
I love talking about this match with you. I can't wait till we continue to build on this here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, which is available, of course, every single Friday on extremehardy.com and early access as well at adfreeshows.com. Next week, Matt Hardy, we got a cool one.
Yeah.
We're talking about CM Punk.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun conversation.
As we record this, the current AEW champion, he's going to be facing Jon Moxley tonight as we record this. So by the time this drops, there will be a unified champion, unless there's some ballyhoo finish, which isn't very AEW. So I expect us to have a champion coming out of this. Hopefully my words don't age poorly here. But man, it's a guy that you've known for a long time in wrestling. You've worked with him, but especially your brother had a very close and contentious feud with him, and I'm very curious to hear your perception of that and about him coming into AEW. There's been a lot of rumor and innuendo in the last couple of weeks here, as Bruce Pritchard would like to say. So what can we look forward to in this CM Punk episode?
CM Punk's a very polarizing character, without a doubt. So it's going to be a fun conversation. Really fun conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
I just think it's going to be very different than some of the episodes we've done here before. Absolutely. And as always, guys, we ask you to please leave us that 5-star review. Indeed. Because if you do...
That 5-star review.
Not only will you be entered to win stuff, but you'll also potentially have your review read on air. Like from Chase Talent, who says, Hardy Mark for life. This podcast gets me through my week. This is easily my favorite podcast on the planet. I can't wait for TLC 1. It's going to be amazing. I hope we made you happy with that one. He says, I would literally give my life to be able to simply ask Matt and Jeff a few questions. The Hardys have been my favorite wrestlers since 1998. I've seen Matt live for the first time at Mania 34. I've never seen Jeff live. It's my number one bucket list item. Keep the shirts, keep the gimmicks. Just put me in a situation to meet the Hardys. It would be delightful. Thanks, guys. Love y'all forever. Keep tearing it down in AEW. Well, my friend, if you'd like to ask Matt questions, we allow that opportunity every week here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy with hashtag Ask Matt. Pretty cool review there, huh?
Very, very cool.
Thank you very much for that one, Chase. And again, you send them to us at Matt Hardy Pod, at John Alba, at Matt Hardy Brand. You never know. You might be entered to win something cool. Matt Hardy, anything else you'd like to add this week as we wrap up TLC 1?
No, I really enjoyed this, though. I always like looking back, especially these really iconic moments in my career. And obviously the first ever TLC match was an iconic moment. So it was a lot of fun. And I just want to say once again, thank all of you guys who have been supporting the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Myself and John dump a lot of love, sweat, and tears into these things. So we're glad you're enjoying. Thank you for supporting us.
Thank you so much, my friends. The words have been spoken. This has been the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. We'll see you next time.
Deletion!